The elevator didn't stop on the 42nd floor. Not this time. Not for her. She stood there, eyes fixed on the glowing P, because she wasn't going to guess anymore. She was going to find out. Have you ever trusted someone, only to feel the silence start to grow between the words? Has a name ever echoed in your head long after they swore it meant nothing? If you've ever felt the weight of being someone's only, until you realized you weren't, then this story is for you. Welcome back to Mr. Charles Stories, where the truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits quietly behind locked doors. If you're ready for a story about betrayal, quiet strength, and a love that asked for nothing but took too much, like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. Now, let's begin. It was that smooth, almost silent kind of luxury, the kind that made you forget the floor numbers even existed. Leora Merrin didn't move. Her hand still hovered near the panel, but the button was already lit. Penthouse. She had the access code. She had the black titanium key card. She had his last name sitting in the corner of her email signature, but she no longer had certainty. The glass doors opened into stillness. The air smelled like cedar and vanilla, Riven's signature blend, hand-selected, imported from Tokyo. He wasn't home, but something else was. He wasn't famous in the traditional way. Riven Dawn didn't walk red carpets or post selfies, but his name was everywhere. Financial columns, keynote panels, TED interviews with millions of views. Billionaire. Genius. Disruptor. Silent storm. Leora had no interest in the buzz. She was in Santa Monica for one reason only: to secure a renewable energy partnership for her consultancy firm. She didn't do clickbait. She did real strategy. Impact. She didn't expect the man at the back of the summit room to be him. The one not talking. The one not smiling. He watched her speak, not like a man attracted, but like a man calculating gravity. After her talk, he approached, alone. No assistant, no camera crew. "You don't perform for the room," he said. "You let it come to you. That's rare." She blinked, caught off guard. "And you don't ask questions during Q&A. You let others do the noise work." His lip almost curved. Almost. "You noticed? I'm not blind." "No," he said quietly. "You're awake." It didn't feel like a compliment. It felt like a challenge. 3 months later, she moved into his penthouse. It was logical, he said. They were both high-efficiency thinkers. No need for separate leases. She agreed. Mostly. The logic checked out. But deep down, it felt like something else. Like being chosen. 6 months in, he proposed. No grand gesture. No kneeling. Just 2 champagne glasses and a single statement. "If I build with anyone, it'll be you. Say yes or say nothing and stay." She stayed. And she never touched the biometric panel at the end of the north hallway. He called it a smart storage space for rare prototypes and archival tools. "You can go in any time," he'd said once, brushing her arm with a smile. "But it's just clutter." She never did. Because trust doesn't always come from proof. Sometimes it comes from choosing peace over questions, until peace becomes the lie. She stepped out of the elevator. The penthouse greeted her with quiet wealth, marble floors, glass walls framing, the skyline, the low hum of curated jazz from the invisible speakers. Her heels clicked with purpose. She didn't go to the kitchen. She didn't stop at the study. She walked straight to the hallway that never called her name. The north wing, narrow, cold. At the end, a matte black panel glowed under the wall sconce. She stared. 3 years of partnership, 2 of living together, and she'd never tried this door. Not until he whispered another woman's name while he thought she was asleep. Roselle. He was buttoning his shirt for a breakfast meeting. She was finishing coffee on the edge of the bed. His phone buzzed. He turned it over. Fast. Too fast. She didn't ask. She didn't need to. Later that night, when the lights were low and his breath had settled into sleep, she heard him. Roselle. Soft. Like an apology. Like a habit. Her spine tightened beneath the covers. She didn't move. When morning came, she asked with calm precision, "Who's Roselle?" His answer didn't flinch. "She's no one." Leora didn't fight it, because it wasn't a lie worth confronting yet. It was a promise worth testing. She stared at the panel. Then she typed in the passcode, his mother's birth date, the one he used for everything he claimed not to care about. The panel blinked green. Click. The door slid open. The air inside was warm, lived in, not storage, not clutter. A room. No, a suite, with everything. A canopy bed with rose gold trim, fresh roses in a vase, books, candles, a coat on the armchair, shoes on a mat, photographs, dozens of them, of Riven, not one with her. She stepped in, carefully. Like walking through a ghost's memory, she turned toward the ensuite and froze. Movement. She didn't breathe at first. The woman stepped out slowly, as if she didn't expect anyone else there. Mid-30s, soft brown skin, with elegant posture like she'd never once begged for space in a room. Her hair was tied back, neat and intentional. She wore a silk robe that didn't belong to a hotel and didn't look borrowed. The woman froze too. Their eyes locked. Recognition happened in both directions. "You're Leora," the woman said. It wasn't a question. It was quiet surrender. Leora didn't blink. "And you're the one he promised was no one." The silence didn't fight back. The woman looked away for a second, then stepped fully into view. "He said you'd never come in. That you wouldn't want to." "I didn't," Leora replied. "But I stopped believing him 3 weeks ago." The woman moved toward the edge of the room, not too close, not too distant. Her name hung in the air before Leora even asked it. "Roselle." Leora exhaled, not because she was angry, but because her instincts had been right. That name had been tucked between Riven's teeth, like a memory he never let dissolve. "What is this place?" she asked, her voice steady. Roselle walked to the chair and lifted her coat, folding it neatly before answering. "A room he made, for when things got complicated, when he couldn't be honest with either of us." Leora didn't interrupt. She let the explanation come on its own time. "I've been here on and off for 2 years, Roselle continued. "Sometimes longer stretches, sometimes just overnight. He told me you were business, that you didn't want more, that I didn't want more." Leora repeated slowly. Roselle nodded. "When I started asking questions, he called me history. Said you were his future. The hurt should have burned hotter, but it didn't. It landed like ash." "Did you love him?" Leora asked. "I did," Roselle said. "Even after I stopped trusting him." Leora leaned against the doorframe, taking in the room again. It was carefully curated, warm but controlled. Not like the rest of the penthouse. This space had softness, the kind of softness he never offered her. "He made you a secret," Leora said. Roselle's eyes dropped. "And he made you the lie." They didn't raise voices. They didn't accuse. They sat on opposite sides of the room, like survivors waiting out a storm that had already passed. Leora didn't cry. Her heartbreak didn't want spectacle. It wanted truth, and now it had it. Roselle broke the silence first. "He said he couldn't let me go because I knew too much, that I'd break the image he'd built. He was protecting his brand," Leora said flatly. Roselle nodded. "And punishing us both." Leora stood, walked toward the door. Her hand touched the frame for a moment. "I don't hate you. I know. I just feel tired." Roselle gave a faint smile, the kind that hurt more than comforted. "I've been tired a long time." Leora looked back once more before stepping into the hallway. "You should leave here before he gets back," she said. "Don't wait for him to explain." "I won't," Roselle replied. "I already packed." Leora left the door open. She wanted him to see the truth the second he walked in. She didn't take anything with her, not yet. She returned to the main living room and sat on the long sectional couch, eyes fixed on the hallway. She didn't check the time. She didn't rehearse what to say. 2 hours passed. Then 3. The door finally opened. Riven walked in wearing a tailored black suit, travel-weary but sharp. His hand carried a coat over one arm. His voice was already forming a greeting until he saw her, and the open door behind her. He froze mid-step. Leora didn't move. "You found her," he said, more to himself than to her. She nodded once. "She's not your secret anymore." He dropped the coat on the armrest, slowly stepped forward. "Leora, don't," she said, quietly but firm. "You weren't confused. You were careful. I never stopped loving you, but you loved her too. And you let both of us believe we were alone." He sat on the edge of the coffee table, hands open, expression almost pleading. "It wasn't like that. I never meant to—" "You did," she interrupted. "You meant all of it. The locked door, the staged excuses, the lie when I asked. You chose it, over and over." He said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. She stood. He did too. Reflex. Leora looked at him fully, not as a man she loved, but as a man who didn't know what to do with the love he'd been given. "I'll have my assistant send a truck for my things. You don't have to leave like this," he whispered. "I'm not leaving in anger, Riven. I'm leaving in clarity." She walked toward the elevator. She didn't touch his shoulder. She didn't ask him why. She didn't want to hear one more version of a man explaining how two women became a convenience. She pressed the button. The elevator opened without resistance, and as the doors closed, she knew the most painful room wasn't the one with the other woman in it. It was the one she lived in, where every compliment came with a corner left unlit. She wasn't going to live in that kind of room ever again. Not in a penthouse, not in a relationship, not in her own skin. She was done being careful, and she was done with being almost chosen. If you've ever trusted someone who said, "There's nothing to worry about," only to find out you were right to worry. If you've ever opened a door and saw the truth waiting, soft, silent, and undeniable, then you know what Leora felt. Drop A in the comments if you've ever been lied to with a straight face. And don't forget, like this video, subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories and share it with someone who needs to know secrets don't stay hidden forever. Not in love, and not in a locked room. Riven didn't chase her. He sat in the living room for hours, unmoving. The door to the north hallway was still open behind him. That door had never been left ajar before. He looked at it now like it was mocking him. The room was empty. Roselle was gone. Leora was gone. And all that remained was the scent of both. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, then ran a hand down his face. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't thrown a single thing. But her silence cracked him wider than he expected. He'd built walls for a living, around companies, brands, investments, but he'd never imagined someone could leave without slamming a door and still take everything with them. His hand hovered over his phone, but he didn't call, because what could he say? Instead, he walked down the hallway, pushed the door fully open, and stared at the bed he once made for someone he wouldn't name in daylight. For the first time, the space felt hollow, not private, not controlled, just hollow. Leora didn't cry until she got back to her office, not because she was holding it in, but because she didn't know what part of her had shattered. It wasn't her heart. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the fact that she had seen the signs and still let herself believe it wasn't what it looked like. She sat at her desk in the corner office of Meron Energy Holdings, overlooking the city she'd helped power in more ways than one. The skyline didn't care who lied, but the reflection in her glass wall did. It showed a woman still standing, still composed, still her. But behind the steel expression was the ache of being replaced before she even realized she'd been competing. No, not replaced, shared, and not with permission. 2 days later, she received a message from Roselle. Subject, safe arrival body. Just letting you know I left that night. Booked a place out in Valencia. I'm okay. Thank you for not screaming. Thank you for not blaming me. No attachments, no signature, just quiet gratitude. Leora didn't reply right away. She read the message again, then a third time. She didn't owe Roselle forgiveness, but she didn't carry resentment either. because somewhere between the roses and the silence, she'd realized they were both drafted into a lie they never agreed to. That night, she found the box. It was in the penthouse closet she had skipped during her final hours there. A sleek, black velvet box tucked behind the winter coats. She didn't remember seeing it before. Inside it was the engagement ring he never officially gave her. It had her name engraved on the inside, not with a date, just her name. She took a photo of it, placed the box on the dresser, and walked away. No rage, no tears, just the quiet decision never to wear something that was meant to cover up the cracks. The tabloids never found out. Riven kept his brand protected, his interviews sharp and polished. He didn't deny the breakup, but he didn't offer details either. Leora knew why. He wasn't ashamed of the secret room. He was ashamed she found it. Powerful men don't fear mistakes. They fear consequences. A month passed. Then, 2. Leora rebuilt her days with the kind of calm only women who've survived deep betrayal understand. Morning meetings, afternoon calls, quiet dinners alone. She didn't date. She didn't post. She didn't explain. When colleagues asked about Riven, she answered once, softly, it didn't work out. That was enough. People stopped asking, but the silence carried its own weight, because even when no one asked, she remembered the room, the smell of roses that weren't for her, the way Roselle had folded her coat like she'd been taught to disappear, the way Riven didn't even run after her. She remembered, not as a wound, but as a warning. She started journaling again, not for therapy, not for peace, but for record, because she refused to let her story only exist behind closed doors. She wrote about the way manipulation wears a tailored suit. She wrote about how secrets don't always hide in phones. Sometimes they're built into floor plans. She didn't write Riven's name once. She didn't need to. She knew who the story was for, and who it was no longer about. She mailed Roselle a package. Inside, a short note, a new set of keys, and the contact card of a realtor she trusted. No woman deserves to live in someone else's shadows. You deserved more. Start with somewhere new, and let this be the last address where you were ever hidden. No reply came, and none was needed. Some closure doesn't knock. It simply stops waiting. Roselle stood at the edge of a small balcony in Valencia, her tea cooling in her hand as the morning sun washed the skyline in muted gold. She hadn't replied to Leora's letter, not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know how to thank someone for not destroying her. She had been the secret, the backup, the one whose phone was never saved under her real name. And still, when Leora had seen her, she hadn't collapsed into rage. She'd seen her pain, and walked out of the room with her spine intact. It taught Roselle more than any apology Riven ever offered. So she took the apartment, signed the lease, changed her number, and promised herself something simple: no more men who couldn't name her in daylight. Back in the city, Riven's world looked stable, on the surface. He closed a Series D investment with the usual flair, attended an AI policy forum, smiled at journalists with that well-practiced restraint he was known for, but his apartment stayed quiet. He hadn't replaced her. He'd tried, but no one walked into the penthouse without noticing the absence first. Leora hadn't burned bridges. She'd removed herself like a surgeon. No mess, which made her harder to forget. He sat at the grand piano some nights, the one she used to rest her coffee on while reading reports. The cushion still held a faint imprint where she always leaned. His assistant once asked if she'd be coming back. He didn't answer, because somewhere in the deep, cold center of himself, he already knew the answer. She was never coming back, and she would never be quietly kept again. Leora began accepting invitations again. Panels, conferences, roundtables, not to show up, to lead. She took the seat at the head of the table without hesitation now. The same men who once called her Riven's girl now struggled to look her in the eye when her name opened funding rounds without any attachment. And still, she didn't say a word about the breakup. She never named him, not once, but her silence rewrote the story louder than headlines. She didn't leave the man. She left the arrangement. And that scared them more, because they realized the difference. One evening, after closing a wind project deal with the city council, Leora walked into her apartment and dropped her coat on the armrest. It still felt strange, the softness of her new space. It wasn't designed for anyone else. She opened her laptop, cleared her inbox, and sat in silence for a while. Then she pulled out a folder from her drawer. A sketch pad. No screens, no noise, just ideas she'd ignored for too long. She wanted to build something that didn't require permission or approval, not even applause. Just impact, a new initiative, one not tied to her firm. Women in infrastructure, a private accelerator, anonymous funding, private mentorship, a place where no woman would need to smile to be listened to. She launched the program in silence. No press, no photo ops. Just 5 invitations. 5 women. One of them had left a job after a conflict of interest with the COO. Another had resigned quietly after being told you don't fit the culture. Every one of them walked in with a resume stronger than the men who once overlooked them. Leora listened, took notes, offered resources. She never told them where the idea came from. Because it didn't come from her success, it came from the room she wasn't supposed to open. Months later, she received a handwritten envelope. No return name, no sender's address. Inside was a photo, a new house key, and a short note. This is mine now, all of it. No locks, no lies. Thank you. Leora smiled softly. Not out of victory, out of relief. She placed the note in the back of her sketch pad, not as a memory, as a reminder that some stories don't need revenge, they need release. That same week, her calendar filled up again. A trip to Montreal, a climate innovation dinner, some corporate meetings. She confirmed it all. No hesitation. It was time to leave the city for a while. Not to escape, to breathe. Montreal greeted her with wind and quiet wealth. The city felt older, but wiser, like it didn't need to impress her. The snow had started to thin out, just enough to see the cobblestones on the walkways. Leora stepped out of the black car and pulled her coat tighter around her. The conference hotel was sleek, modern, and unapologetically French in design. Minimalist, but warm. She checked in, went to her suite, and unpacked like she always did. Quickly, precisely, and with no wasted motion. The room overlooked the city center. Clean skyline, distant traffic hum. She stood at the window for a few minutes, phone in her hand, but didn't open any apps. There were no messages from him. Not that she expected one. She was no longer wired to wait for anyone's validation, especially not from men who hid rooms behind keypads. Still, Montreal was unfamiliar, and she liked that. She could blend here. Think, breathe. She checked the schedule on the table. A networking dinner tonight, formal, seated, hosted by a venture group out of Chicago with new sustainability partners across Canada. She would attend, not to pitch, just to listen. She arrived late, deliberately. The ballroom was softly lit with pendant chandeliers and cream-colored walls. No music, no loud branding, just clinks of glasses and light conversation. She took her place at table 7, next to him. She didn't know it was him yet, but she noticed his stillness before his face. He wasn't performing, wasn't leading the conversation, just there. A tailored dark grey jacket, clean lines, no tie, hands resting calmly on the tablecloth. He looked up when she settled in beside him. Their eyes met for no more than a second. Just enough. She offered a polite nod. He did the same. That was all. For the next 20 minutes, he didn't speak to her. And she didn't mind. He engaged with the person on his other side, commented once or twice about an ESG initiative in New Mexico, and then went quiet again. No posturing, no laughter for effect. When the server poured the wine, she noticed his glass stayed untouched. "I don't drink at industry events," he said softly, noticing her glance. "Bad habit. Keeps people guessing." She raised an eyebrow, amused. "Does it work?" "Sometimes," he said, then added, "Mostly It keeps things quiet. She looked at him properly now. Early 30s, maybe. Dark brown hair, shorter on the sides. Sharp, but not flashy. Face like he'd seen more than he talked about. "Kason Rourke," he said, offering his hand. "Leora," she replied, taking it. He didn't blink. "I know." She tilted her head, waiting. "You moderated a closed-door session on energy transition at the Vienna Roundtable. 4 years ago." Her brow lifted slightly. "That was barely covered. I was in the back. You didn't look at your slides once, just answered their questions. Direct. Didn't hedge." She leaned back slightly. "You remember that?" "I remember clarity." She blinked once, not out of flattery, but because something about the way he said it wasn't laced with charm. It was fact, and she didn't know what to do with that. The dinner moved on. Kason didn't hover. He didn't make any unnecessary small talk. But when it came time for dessert and half the table stepped out to mingle, he didn't follow. He stayed, and so did she. Their silence wasn't awkward. It was shared. Eventually, he spoke again. "Do you believe in second momentum?" She turned to him. "You mean like second wind?" He shook his head once. "No, not recovery. I mean the next wave, not the one that saves you, the one that teaches you." She looked at him a long moment. "No," she said, "I didn't. Until recently." He nodded, like that made sense. Then he reached inside his jacket and pulled out a simple black business card. No logo, no title, just a first name, a phone number, and one line: "Energy doesn't vanish. It shifts. Call me if you ever want to have a conversation no one else gets to hear," he said. "Not business, not personal, just real." She took the card, and for the first time in months, her pulse moved for something that didn't hurt. The card sat untouched on the bedside table. Leora didn't text. She didn't call. She just kept it close. She spent the next day in back-to-back sessions at the Sustainability Forum. She spoke once, briefly, in a panel on renewable finance frameworks. Her answers were clear, direct, and brief. No anecdotes, no smiles for optics. She knew how to hold a room without performing. It still surprised people. By late afternoon, she stepped out of the last panel and walked into the quiet hotel cafe. She ordered chamomile tea and a croissant, then sat near the window. Montreal was beautiful in the way winter cities often were, still and indifferent, like it didn't need anyone's approval to exist. A moment later, someone walked past her table and paused. Kason. He didn't sit down. He didn't hover. He just looked at her, a half-question in his eyes. She gave the faintest nod. He sat. No introduction this time. No explanation. He looked at her tea. "You look like you needed quiet." "I did." He leaned back. "You want me to go?" "No." One word. That was all. He nodded. And that was all too. They talked for 40 minutes, but not about their resumes, not about their ventures, not about who they used to date. He asked her why she'd gone silent in the industry press lately. She said, "Because I'd rather be missed than misquoted." He smiled at that, the real kind, not wide, just honest. Then he asked her what she was most proud of that no one knew about. She hesitated, then said, "A program I launched anonymously for women in energy. Private. Invitation only. Does it work?" "It does." He didn't say impressive, didn't say wow. He just said, "Good. You didn't need credit. You needed change." She studied him, unsure of what to do with the way her body had gone calm. No pressure. No edge, no calculation. Later that evening, he walked her out of the hotel lobby. It was dark. Cold. The kind of cold that bit at the collarbone even through wool. He shrugged off his coat without a word and placed it gently over her shoulders. She started to protest. He held up a hand. "It's not a transaction, just warmth." She blinked once. Riven would have waited for her to refuse, so he could insist. Kason didn't wait for anything. He offered, then stepped back. She pulled the coat tighter and nodded once. "Thank you." He gave the faintest smile. "Let me know if you ever want to sit somewhere and not talk for longer." Then he walked away. No number request. No "see you soon." Just space. And respect. That night, Leora lay in bed with the coat still draped at the foot. It didn't smell like cologne. It smelled like quiet laundry detergent, like someone who didn't want to be remembered for how they smelled, but for how they made people feel. She didn't sleep for hours. Not from sadness, from stillness. Something was shifting, and for the first time, she wasn't afraid of the next room. She was curious. The apartment was too quiet. Even for him. Riven stood in the entryway of the penthouse, keys still in hand. He hadn't expected the difference to be this obvious. The lights were dimmed, just like always. The floors spotless. The scent of cedar and vanilla still lingered in the air. But something had shifted. Something fundamental. He stepped further in and realized what it was. There was no hum from the back hallway. No warmth in the cushions. The glass coffee table didn't have the usual fingerprint smudges Leora always left after working late. The throw blanket was still folded. The picture frame on the side table was turned face down. She had been here, and she had made choices. That unsettled him more than he admitted. He went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stood there, staring at the closed panel on the north hallway. He hadn't touched that door since Leora left it open. He could still see her, sitting on the couch that night, eyes steady, voice calm, the open room behind her a wordless accusation. You weren't confused. You were careful. He hadn't forgotten those words. They lodged in his chest the way truth does when spoken without venom. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't needed to, and that unnerved him more than rage ever could. He opened his email. There were updates from the Zurich office, questions from the finance team, and a calendar filled with events he no longer cared about. He saw her name once, copied in an industry-wide memo. Her firm was announcing a new collaboration with a European wind network. He clicked on it. Her quote was simple. "We don't aim for attention, we aim for impact." No branding, no photo, no performance, just presence. She was still building, still visible, and somehow more untouchable than ever. He closed the laptop. The silence inside his penthouse wasn't peaceful anymore. It was permanent. 3 nights later, he met with an old friend at a private lounge in Soho. They talked business for the first half hour. Then his friend leaned back, nursing a glass of whiskey, and said, "So, where's your shadow?" Riven frowned. "What?" "Leora," his friend clarified. "She used to walk 2 steps behind you everywhere. Thought it was a dance. Turns out she was just giving you space to mess it up." He didn't respond. The friend continued, "You always liked silence. Guess you got it." Riven nodded slowly. "Yeah, I got it." He finished his drink. Didn't order another. That night, he stood in the hallway again. The same black panel glowed faintly under his fingertips. He opened the door. Everything was still there. The bed, the chair, the photos. But they looked staged now, lifeless. Roselle's perfume was gone. Her coat was gone. The space wasn't hidden anymore. It was just empty. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked at a photo of himself on the wall, smiling. The kind of smile that came easy when there were 2 women believing they were the only one. He turned the frame face down and left the room without closing the door. The following morning, Leora checked out of the Montreal hotel. She didn't extend her stay, didn't leave a thank you note for the concierge. She packed her bag with the same precision she always did, zipped it closed, and left without looking back. The trip had done what she needed it to do. Not distract. Clear. She didn't text Kaysen, but she didn't throw the card away either. She kept it in her wallet. Not as a maybe, as a reminder. There were men who waited until you begged for truth, and there were men who offered it, quietly, without being asked. By the time she returned to the city, her office had shifted in energy. A new partnership deal had landed in her absence. Her team looked sharper, more sure. They didn't need her to hover. They just needed her to lead. And she did. But something in her had shifted. She worked smarter now. not harder. She no longer answered calls after 8. She no longer attended events that weren't worth her presence. She no longer gave time to voices that hesitated when they said her name. The freedom didn't come from anger. It came from release. The old version of her, the one who used to overcompensate, overaccommodate, and overthink, was gone. She didn't mourn that woman. She honored her. Then she walked past her. Meanwhile, in the penthouse Riven once curated like a showroom, nothing changed. And that was the problem. The art still hung in symmetrical alignment. The light still dimmed automatically at dusk. The scent still pumped from the built-in dispensers he installed himself. But the air felt staged. He tried inviting someone new up once, a woman from a gallery opening. She complimented the view. He offered her wine. But when she leaned in to kiss him, he pulled away. Not because he missed Leora, because no one else felt real in this space. They all looked like placeholders, even him. That same week, he received a package, no return address. Inside was a single item, the engagement ring, still in its box. He turned it over. The engraving was still there, just her name. No message, no note, nothing to argue with, nothing to answer. He sat with it in his palm for 10 minutes before closing the box and placing it in the safe. It didn't feel like rejection. It felt like her final word, without speaking. And in that silence, he realized something he'd never said aloud. She didn't walk out on love. She walked out on the version of love he thought she'd settle for. Later that night, in a rare moment of discomfort, he opened his journal, the one his therapist once told him to use when silence gets too loud. He wrote one line: "She gave me no war, and somehow that's what ruined me." He didn't write another word. He closed the book and sat in the dark. He wasn't the man who'd been caught. He was the man who'd been left, completely, without negotiation. And the door she opened? He'd never be able to close it again. The apartment was smaller. That was the first thing people noticed when they visited. It didn't have skyline views, no elevator that skipped floors, no custom sound system humming in the background. But it was hers. Leora stood in the kitchen on a Thursday morning, barefoot, tea in hand, staring at the stack of folders she'd laid out the night before. 5 candidates, 5 women. Each of them had applied to the anonymous program Leora launched under the radar. Women in infrastructure, a private accelerator. No logos, no PR announcements, just support that didn't demand a smile or a story. She liked the silence of it, the power of helping without having to prove anything. She opened the top folder. A single mother from Texas who'd left a construction firm after being passed over for the 5th time in 2 years. She had redesigned the logistics model that saved the company millions, but her supervisor had taken credit. Typical. Leora marked her as accepted. No essay needed, no elevator pitch. Her results spoke louder than her wounds. At the office, her team noticed the shift. She was sharper now, not in cruelty, but in clarity. She didn't ask for updates twice. She didn't entertain vendors who fumbled during meetings. She didn't cover for other people's delays. But she was never unkind. She had learned how to say no with grace, how to walk away from unnecessary noise. The kind of strength that scared people because it didn't look angry, it looked done. That evening, she hosted a private strategy session with a few of the accelerator participants. The meeting was virtual, no cameras, first names only. Each woman had 15 minutes to share their roadblock and get feedback. Leora didn't lecture. She asked questions, precise ones. What did they say when you proposed that design? What's the real cost of walking away from that firm? Is fear holding your plan, or are you just waiting for permission? The women didn't always have answers, but they left with direction, and Leora ended the call the same way every time: don't wait for recognition, build anyway. She powered down her laptop and sat back. For the first time in a while, her silence didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. She poured a glass of water, walked to the window, and stood there for a long moment. From this view, the city didn't look glossy. People walking, lights flickering, buses rolling by. Nothing was curated here. No one was pretending. She liked that. Across the city, Riven sat in a high-rise boardroom, surrounded by analysts and acquisition attorneys. They were discussing a new deal, renewable infrastructure in Southeast Asia. Big numbers, fast returns. He wasn't listening. He kept thinking about a phrase she used to say whenever someone pitched something hollow. Pretty deck. Weak spine. She'd said it once in front of his team, and he'd laughed like it didn't sting. But now, he heard it everywhere. The room kept talking. He finally raised a hand and cut the conversation short. "We'll revisit this next week," he said, standing. "I need the next model to be functional, not flattering." They looked confused. He didn't explain. He never did. But even his chief counsel could tell. Something in him had changed. Not softened, but sobered. Later that night, Riven checked her company's site. No mention of her in the press release. But the partnership was significant. She was no longer climbing. She was quietly sitting at the top and building roofs for others. He clicked off the browser and stared at the blank screen. He knew he had no place in her new chapters, and he'd have to live with being a man she never exposed, only left behind. Kason Rourke didn't text her for 3 weeks. Not once. But on the 4th, a small package arrived at her office. No note, no sender. Just a book. The Architecture of Trust. Systems that don't collapse under pressure. Inside the cover, one line was handwritten. "Thank you for showing me what that looks like." No signature, but she didn't need one. She placed the book on the shelf behind her desk, not with the others she'd read, but in the space she was saving, for things she wasn't rushing. That weekend, she visited her sister's house in Brooklyn. Family time used to feel like something she squeezed in between flights and calls. Now, it felt like the grounding she never knew she needed. Her niece ran into her arms the moment she stepped through the door. "You smell like tea and books," the little girl said. Leora laughed. "Is that good or bad?" "Good. You smell like home." She didn't expect the words to settle the way they did, because for the first time in a long time, she realized she had become her own home. Meanwhile, Riven spent his weekend reviewing architectural proposals for a new eco-complex he wanted to build overseas. The designs were stunning, efficient, innovative, visually flawless, but every rendering included a central glass atrium, wide open, natural light pouring in. He stared at that feature for a long time. Leora had always asked for more glass in their old space. She'd said, "I need to see sky. Otherwise, I forget the world isn't just yours." He had dismissed it as poetic nonsense. Now it echoed. He closed the file, walked to his window, and realized he didn't remember the last time someone walked into his space and saw the sky. Monday morning, Leora hosted another session for the accelerator. One of the women broke down mid-presentation, said she'd been let go that morning, said she'd started believing she wasn't built for this. Leora let the silence stretch. Then she said, "You were let go by a system that was never made for you. That's not your reflection, it's theirs." The woman cried harder, not because of pain, because someone named the truth. When the call ended, Leora sat back and whispered quietly to herself, "This is the room that matters. Not the penthouse, not the one with the secret. This one, where every woman was seen, fully, without hiding." Kason finally texted her that evening. "I'm back in town. No pressure. Just wondering if you'd like to sit somewhere quiet again. No talking required. Unless you want to." She stared at the message for a while, then typed 2 words. "I would." Some women rebuild quietly. No drama. No announcements. Just new rooms, new rules. And no one to explain anything to. If you've ever walked away from someone who made you question your worth, and found peace in places with no cameras, drop A in the comments. And if you believe strength isn't loud, it's consistent, calm, and clear. Subscribe to Mr. Charles' Stories, where the most powerful stories are the ones built in silence and remembered forever. Your next chapter doesn't need noise. It needs truth. The coffee shop was tucked into a corner off Astor Place, not trendy, not loud, not trying to be noticed. That's why Leora chose it. Kaysen arrived 5 minutes early. He sat at the table near the back, the one closest to the frosted window. He didn't check his watch. He didn't pull out his phone. When Leora walked in, she saw him immediately. He looked the same. Deliberate posture, calm energy, eyes that didn't dart. He stood when he saw her. Not dramatically, just respectfully. She sat across from him. Neither of them spoke for the first few seconds. Then he smiled lightly. "You still like quiet corners?" She nodded. "You still know how to pick them?" They ordered tea. No small talk, no updates, just space. And it felt good. 15 minutes passed before either of them asked a personal question. He spoke first. "Are you still building that thing you won't name publicly?" She looked at him carefully. "Yes." "Good," he said. "That kind of power doesn't need people." She stirred her tea. "You always talk like you've been watching people for a long time." "I have." He leaned back slightly. "Most people don't disappoint me. They just confirm what I already knew." She tilted her head. "And what did I confirm?" He didn't answer right away. "Then, that some women are quiet, not because they're soft, but because they've seen too much." She didn't smile, but something in her eyes softened. He didn't touch her hand, didn't lean in. He just waited, and she realized he wasn't here to fix her, or fix what had been broken before him. He was here because she'd stopped hiding. When they stepped outside, the air was colder than expected. She pulled her coat tighter. He didn't offer his, but he walked slightly slower, like matching her pace mattered more than getting somewhere fast. They stopped at the corner. "I don't know what this is," she said, voice low. "I'm not asking you to," he replied. "But I'd like to see you again." She studied him. There was no push, no pressure, just presence. She nodded once. "Okay," he smiled. "Next time, your choice of coffee shop." She raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" "I pick places with no music, no lights, and no crowds." "Sounds like peace," he said. Then he walked away. And for once, she didn't feel abandoned. She felt allowed. That night, Leora stood in front of her mirror, brushing her hair slowly. She caught her own gaze, steady, centered, unbothered. Not the woman Riven left behind, not the woman who had to find the secret door, the woman who had finally closed it, and didn't miss what was behind it. It had been 6 months. Leora hadn't marked the day. She didn't write it down or circle it on a calendar. But when she woke that morning, something in her chest felt different. Not heavy, not sad, just settled. She poured her tea, sat by the window, and stared out at the city. The same skyline she used to view from Riven's penthouse, but now from a lower floor, in a smaller apartment, with no custom lighting or curated playlist humming in the background. Stillness. Real. She thought back to that night, the open door, the fresh roses, the other woman. She remembered Roselle's voice. He said I was too much history. The way she had said it. Not bitter, not shocked, just tired. And then she remembered her own voice, steady in the living room hours later. You weren't confused. You were careful. She had meant it. And now, she no longer repeated it in her head. That moment no longer owned her. It had simply passed. Across the city, Riven stood in his office, staring at the numbers on the screen. They didn't matter. His team was celebrating a new close, a major funding milestone for a project that would make headlines in 3 countries. But the room felt hollow. His assistant brought him a bottle of champagne. "Do you want to do the press photo now?" He shook his head. "No press." She paused, surprised. "The board will ask." "Tell them the win stands on its own." She left the room, unsure of what shifted. Riven sat down. He opened a drawer. Inside was the ring box. He hadn't moved it since she sent it back. He opened it. Read the engraving. Just her name. Still sharp. Still untouched. He placed it back, closed the drawer, and realized something he hadn't been willing to say before. She didn't leave because of the other woman. She left because of the man he chose to be. The one who thought silence meant safety, who thought being emotionally unavailable was power, who built a room for his secret, and forgot the woman beside him had keys to her own life. That evening, Leora hosted a live call with the 5 newest accelerator members. They were anxious, she could tell. First-time founders, first-time visionaries. All women who had been overlooked, second-guessed, sidelined. She listened. She offered strategy. And then, near the end of the session, one woman said, "I almost didn't apply. I didn't think I was worth investing in." Leora looked straight at the screen. "You don't have to convince the right people," she said. "You only have to stop making room for the wrong ones." Silence. Then, one by one, the women nodded. Some were crying. And Leora realized this was the room that should have always existed. Not the one hidden at the back of a penthouse, but this one, built with truth. No locks, no lies. The building wasn't tall. That surprised her. Kaysen had sent the address the day before. A brownstone off a quiet street in the West Village, tucked between a florist and an antique shop. Leora assumed it would be some kind of office. A loft, maybe. Some converted showroom with wide glass doors and branding etched into the concrete. But it was just a door, painted deep navy. Clean brass numbers, no intercom. Just a simple message in the text. "Walk in. I'll be there." She stood on the sidewalk for a moment, unsure. Then, she opened it. The space inside smelled like sandalwood and something else. Eucalyptus, maybe. It wasn't strong, just present. Like someone cared enough to set a tone, but didn't try too hard to impress. Wooden floors, tall ceilings, minimalist furniture in soft neutrals, a single wall of windows with sheer white curtains, a bookshelf with no pattern, plants that were thriving but not staged. And then Kaysen, in the kitchen area, 2 mugs in hand. He didn't walk toward her right away. He let her look. When she turned to face him, he simply said, "You came." "I did." He nodded toward the couch. "Tea. Always." She sat, and the quiet wrapped around them like they were supposed to be there. "I bought this place 2 years ago," he said after a while. "Didn't change much. Just cleaned it out." She sipped. "It's peaceful. Thank you." That was the goal. Leora took a breath. "Is it your main place?" "No. I live uptown. This is where I come when I need to think." She looked around. "It feels like it's used for more than thinking." He smiled. "Sometimes. Mostly it's for presence. I've had more real conversations here than in any office I've owned." She looked at him carefully. "So why invite me here?" "Because I wanted to have a real conversation." Leora let that sit. Kaysen didn't rush. He never did. Finally, she asked, "And what do you want to talk about?" "You," he said plainly. Her brow raised. "That's a bit broad." He nodded. "Narrow it down for me, then." She stared into her cup. "I don't know what version of me people expect anymore. The businesswoman, the one who got burned, the one who walked away, the one who stayed quiet, the one who built again. Which version do you feel closest to?" She didn't answer immediately. Then, "The one who doesn't need to explain herself." Kaysen nodded like he'd been waiting for that. "Then we don't need to," he said. And just like that, the conversation shifted. They didn't talk about Riven, not once, and that alone told her everything she needed to know. Kaysen wasn't trying to win by comparison. He wasn't trying to prove he was better. He was just present. He asked her about her latest project, not to compliment, but to understand. He asked where she learned to lead with silence. She told him it came from growing up in rooms where being loud got you ignored. He asked if she ever missed being someone's everything. She said she used to. Now she missed being nothing, just being. He listened, not for the sake of responding, but for the sake of her, and when she grew quiet, he didn't rush in with noise. He let her be. After a long stretch of stillness, he stood and walked toward the window. She joined him there. The street below was calm. Sunday afternoon walkers, no chaos. He pointed down. "That antique shop?" I bought a lamp there 5 years ago. The owner talks about everything like it has a soul. She smiled. I like that. Kaysen turned to her. Can I ask you something personal? You already have, she said softly. He gave a half grin. Fair. But this one's specific. Go on. Do you think you've healed? That question shouldn't have startled her, but it did. Not because it was invasive, because it was honest. She didn't answer right away. Then, I think I stopped needing revenge, and I started needing peace more than clarity. That sounds like healing to me. She looked at him. I don't know if I trust what's next. Good, he said. That means you're taking it seriously. He walked her to the door a while later. No pressure to stay, no hint of disappointment. Just a quiet walk down the hallway and a soft hand on the doorframe. Thank you, she said. For what? For not trying to fix me. Kaysen looked at her. Level. That's not my job. That was never the invitation. She held his gaze. He didn't lean in, but his hand brushed hers. Just once, with the back of his knuckles. That was enough. She stepped outside, and for the first time since she found that room, she didn't feel haunted. She felt human again. That night, she took a long shower. No music, just water and thought. She stood under the stream and closed her eyes. The images came, as they always did. The hidden room, Roselle's face, Riven's frozen expression when he walked in and saw the door open. Her own voice, calm, quiet, final. But this time, they didn't sting. They just passed through, like they belonged to another life. She dried off, put on her robe, and walked to her desk. She opened a journal she hadn't written in for weeks, and wrote a single line. I think I'm starting to like the parts of me that survived. Then she closed it, and smiled. The next day, she sent the message. Dinner this week? I'll choose the place. No corner seats this time. Kaysen replied within minutes. I'm yours for the evening. Wednesday? She paused before answering, not because of hesitation, because for the first time in years, she was approaching something that didn't carry debris. Wednesday it is. She closed the chat and sat with that. A choice she made with no need to explain. Wednesday came soft. The restaurant she chose wasn't expensive or exclusive. It was tucked behind a bookstore in the Lower East Side. Warm lights, aged wood, no dress code. He arrived on time. When he walked in, she didn't stand. She just looked up from her glass of water, and he greeted her like she'd been there in his life for longer than a few weeks. Like it wasn't new, just waiting. He sat across from her, shrugged off his coat. You picked well, he said, looking around. I picked for quiet, she replied. You picked for honesty. She smiled. They didn't talk about feelings, not directly. They talked about food and music and places she wanted to visit when her schedule allowed for disappearing. She mentioned Morocco. He said he'd been once, but stayed too long with the wrong people. Wrong people how? She asked. People who only want you when you're useful. She looked at him. You sound like you've been used a lot. I sound like I stopped letting it happen. The corner of her mouth curved. She raised her glass slightly. He clinked his gently against it. No words, just acknowledgement. The food came. He let her finish each sentence before speaking. He didn't fill pauses. He didn't stare too hard. But when she talked about the program she was building, he leaned in, not with his body, but with his attention. That's what legacy is, he said. What is? Quiet change that doesn't need your name on it to matter. She nodded once, then asked him something she hadn't planned. Have you ever been betrayed? Kaysen blinked once, then set his fork down carefully. Yes. Bad? He looked straight at her. Enough to know when someone's trying not to bleed in front of you. Her chest tightened. He didn't say it for pity. He said it to stand beside her. Without touching the pain. After dinner, they walked outside together. The air had dropped a few degrees. The kind of chill that made your words shorter. She didn't say much. Neither did he. They walked halfway down the block before he asked, Would it be all right if I held your hand? She stopped walking. Looked at him. There was no pressure in his eyes. No tension. No need to prove anything. She reached out slowly, laced her fingers through his, and they kept walking. No grand declarations, no promises, just that. Two people present. That night, Leora didn't overthink. She undressed slowly, brushed her hair, and slid beneath the sheets with a calm she hadn't felt in years. Not because her story was healed, but because she was no longer alone in it. Casson hadn't erased the pain. He just made space beside it. And that mattered more than anything. It came in the middle of a workday. A short email, no subject line. From rosalek@reserva.com. Message: if you're open to it, I'd like to talk. Not about him, about us. Coffee? This weekend? No pressure. Leora stared at the screen. She hadn't heard from Roselle since the day she'd sent the apartment referral. And that quiet note, no woman deserves to live in someone else's shadows. She didn't delete the email. She didn't answer it immediately either. She just read it once, then again, and realized something that surprised her. She wasn't angry. She wasn't guarded. She was ready, not for closure, but for something deeper, recognition. Saturday morning, she arrived at a cafe in Gramercy. Small, warm, family-run. No music, just mugs clinking and the low hum of weekend chatter. Roselle was already there. Same soft presence, no makeup, no jewelry, just a simple brown sweater and a navy coat on the back of her chair. She looked up and smiled, not with apology, not with relief, just gently. Leora approached and sat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Roselle said, "Thank you for coming." Leora nodded once. "Thank you for asking." They both took a breath. Roselle reached for her tea, then paused. "I've rewritten that night in my head more times than I can count. And no version of it ever ended with you walking out quietly, or offering me help." Leora looked at her evenly. "And no version of it ever started with you being the enemy." Roselle swallowed hard. "You were the only one in that entire mess who had nothing to gain. But you still left with dignity." Leora stirred her drink slowly. "I left because staying would have made me someone I didn't recognize." Roselle nodded, then leaned back. "You know what's strange?" she said. "He never lied to me." Leora tilted her head. "Then how did it last so long?" "He didn't lie," Roselle clarified. "But he never told the truth either. He left just enough room for me to tell it to myself." Leora exhaled slowly. "That's not honesty. That's design. I know that now." Their silence wasn't tense. It was shared. Two women who had carried different parts of the same weight, now sitting across from each other without needing to lift it again. After a while, Roselle said, "I moved to Beacon. I'm working for an education non-profit now. Quiet town. Different pace. I grow my own herbs." Leora smiled softly. "That sounds like peace." "It is." Then Roselle added, "And it's mine." Leora met her eyes. "That's the most important part." Roselle nodded, then said, "I didn't ask you here to apologize. You already gave me more grace than I deserved." "I didn't come here to forgive," Leora replied. "I came because I wanted to see what a woman looks like when she's no longer waiting to be chosen." That landed like a truth neither had said aloud before. Roselle sat still for a beat, then said, "I used to think being chosen was love. Now I think being seen is the minimum." They talked for an hour, not about Riven, not about the betrayal, about themselves, about the lives they were building, the things they no longer feared, the peace they had to learn how to accept, the strange guilt that came with outgrowing pain. By the time they stood to leave, there was no bitterness left between them, only quiet acknowledgement. Before parting, Roselle said, "There's something beautiful about not being each other's story villain." Leora responded, "Or casualty." They shared a look, a long, knowing one. Then they walked in opposite directions, and didn't look back. Later that evening, Leora walked into her apartment and found a note slipped under her door. No envelope, no name, just one sentence, handwritten. "Thank you for not fighting me that day. You saved me too." She didn't need to guess who left it. She folded the paper once, slid it into her journal, and sat in the quiet. Not to think, not to mourn, just to feel. Roselle was not her past, and neither was Riven. They were both part of the room she walked through, not the one she lived in anymore. It was raining the next time she saw Kaysen. Not heavy rain, just the kind that makes city lights blur a little and quiets everyone's footsteps. He was waiting outside the bookstore where she'd chosen to meet him. He didn't bring an umbrella, just stood under the overhang, hands in his coat pockets, eyes soft when she approached. "You're early," she said. "So are you." She smiled, only slightly. He noticed the paper bag in her hand. "What's that?" "A book I found by accident," she said. "But it felt like it was written for people who've rebuilt themselves 3 times and still don't trust walls." He raised an eyebrow. "You buying it for yourself?" "No. For someone who probably already owns it but needs the reminder." He didn't ask who, and she didn't offer. They walked together, no destination in mind. Rain tapped along the sidewalk in a rhythm that made conversation unnecessary. "But still," he spoke. "I saw your name mentioned in a piece this week," he said. "Something about how you're reshaping the way infrastructure firms handle internal equity audits." She rolled her eyes. "Journalists like to make systems sound more exciting than they are." He smirked. "It's not exciting, but it matters." They stopped at a corner. Traffic moved slowly. People passed with umbrellas tilted forward. Kaysen looked at her. "Do you ever get tired of being the one who holds everything together?" Her eyes met his. "I don't hold everything. I just stopped letting people pull me apart." He nodded. They kept walking. They found shelter in a small Korean cafe. Narrow layout, wooden floors, a long row of windows fogged with heat and rain. He ordered barley tea for them both. She sat across from him, the book now on the table between them. She tapped it once. "I've been thinking about something." "Go on." She hesitated. "Do you ever feel like the strongest parts of you were built from the things that nearly broke you?" Kaysen leaned forward, hands wrapped around his cup. "Not feel." "I know. And what do you do with that?" "I don't wear it like armor. I just remember I don't owe anyone access just because they survived next to me." She exhaled slowly. "That's it," she said. "That's the line I've been looking for." He studied her. "You don't trust easily." "No," she said. "But I'm learning that I don't have to. Not immediately. I just have to not run." He nodded. "That's enough for me." They sat in that cafe for almost 2 hours, talking about nothing, talking about everything. She told him about her niece's drawing that she taped on the fridge. He told her about an old friend he lost touch with and regretted not calling back. They didn't define what was happening. They didn't plan the next step. But when he reached across the table and placed his fingers lightly over hers, she didn't move away. And when he said, "You don't have to speak to be understood," she let her hands stay there. Still, quiet, real. Back home, Leora sat on the edge of her bed with her journal open. She wrote a single sentence. "Not everyone who enters quietly is trying to sneak in." Then she closed the book, placed it on the nightstand, and turned off the lamp. Sleep came quickly that night, because there was nothing left to explain. Meanwhile, across the city, Riven stood at his window with a glass in hand. No alcohol, just water. He didn't drink much anymore. Didn't go out often either. He read a lot. Old contracts, new industry reports. Every now and then, a news article where Leora's name was mentioned, usually at the bottom, not seeking credit, but always present. He wondered if she still thought about him. He hoped she didn't. He didn't deserve it. He had built a life of calculated power, but the room he had once locked, it had unlocked him instead, and no amount of curated charm could put him back together. That same night, he received a letter, not email, real paper, no return address, but he knew the handwriting. It was from Roselle, 2 sentences, "I'm well, and I forgive you." He sat with the letter in his lap for over an hour. Didn't fold it, didn't tear it, just sat. Forgiveness didn't clean anything, but it made the silence less suffocating. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and whispered to no one. "Thank you." And that was the first honest thing he'd said all week. The invitation wasn't mailed. It was delivered. An embossed envelope, hand-carried by a courier to her office mid-morning. No logo, no brand. Just her name on the front, in clean serif font. Inside, a private invitation to the annual International Energy and Equity Summit. She wasn't a panelist. She wasn't a guest. She was being honored. For impact without optics. She read the phrase twice. It wasn't a popularity award. It wasn't about headlines. It was for the women no one saw coming, until the system had already shifted under their influence. Leora didn't smile. She simply folded the note, placed it in her desk drawer, and whispered, "Good." Not because she needed the validation, but because it reminded her silence had always been her sharpest strategy. That evening, she called Casson. Thursday, 8 p.m. Formal. "You'll need a suit." He paused. "Are you asking or warning me?" "I'm telling you," she said. "I'll be there." He didn't ask where or why. He trusted that if she wanted him beside her, she had her reasons. The venue was quiet opulence. No red carpet. No flash photography. Just voices that mattered behind closed doors. She entered in black, sleek, simple, confident. Kaysen walked beside her in tailored navy, no tie, understated, elegant, present. People noticed, not because she was loud, because she was different now. There was nothing performative about her presence. She belonged, not because they allowed her in, but because she stopped waiting for permission years ago. Across the room, Riven watched from a distance. He had been invited. Of course, his firm was a major sponsor, but no one had told him she'd be attending. No one had told him she'd be honored. He stood by the bar, glass in hand, listening as a table near him discussed her. "She's the one who created that internal audit model for hiring bias, right?" "Yeah." Quiet release, no press. "But 6 firms adopted it already. I heard she's launching something global next year. Full mentorship pipeline." He tuned out. Looked across the room, saw her standing beside Kaysen. They weren't touching, but Kaysen's body leaned ever so slightly toward hers, and hers didn't move away. Riven felt something shift in his chest. Not regret, not even loss. Grief, not for her. For the version of himself he never became. On stage, Leora accepted the award without a script. No podium notes, no teleprompter, just her voice. When we build systems where only the loudest are heard, we create rooms that silence impact. I've never been the loudest, and I've never needed to be. If you're in this room tonight and you've ever been overlooked, remember, invisibility doesn't mean irrelevance. It means you're still moving where others can't see. Applause followed, not explosive, but meaningful. People stood. Kaysen didn't clap right away. He watched her, like watching someone who'd finally stopped shrinking to fit. She stepped off the stage, calm, not glowing, grounded. She didn't look for Riven in the room, but she saw him. He looked away first, and that was closure enough. After the ceremony, she and Kaysen walked along the edge of the terrace. City lights below, the kind of air that carried memory. He looked at her. "How do you feel?" She thought for a moment, like the door doesn't exist anymore. He nodded once. She added, "And I don't need keys to anything I had to beg to enter." Kaysen stepped a little closer. "I like this version of you," he said. She looked at him. "Which version is that?" "The one that doesn't explain anymore." They stood in silence for a few beats. Then she said, "I think I'm ready to start something. With me, with myself." Kaysen smiled. "Good, because I'm not here to complete anything. Just walk beside it." She reached for his hand, not because she needed it, because she wanted it. And that made all the difference. 2 days after the summit, Leora stood in front of a quiet group of women in a modest event space in the Lower East Side. No photographers, no media, no sponsorship banners, just a chalkboard, a pitcher of water, and 20 chairs filled with women who had been told too many times, "You're not what we're looking for." This was the official launch of her mentorship pipeline, the one she had kept in beta for over a year. No board, no fundraising campaigns, no PR rollout. It was built from the blueprint of women like Roselle and herself. She didn't give a speech. She gave tools, real ones, a list of private investors willing to fund quiet founders, a PDF of structural bias red flags in investor meetings, a contract template that spelled out what fairness looked like in acquisition clauses. And at the end, she stood beside them and said, "You don't have to show them your scars to earn their help. You already qualify. You're here." Several cried, not from pain, from shock, that someone like her was standing beside them, not above. That same night, Leora came home and turned off her phone. She sat at her desk and wrote a letter, not to Riven, to herself, the version of her that once sat outside his bedroom door, wondering if he was texting someone else. The version of her that believed being picked meant being safe. The version of her that folded her ambition so it would fit inside the space he made for her. She didn't cry as she wrote it. She didn't even pause, because the woman at that desk wasn't recovering anymore. She was finished. The next morning, her assistant forwarded her an email. It was from the editorial desk at Industry Current. They wanted to do a feature on her, long-form print edition. Focus, quiet rebuilders, women who didn't explode but outlasted. She stared at the subject line, then closed the tab, not because she wasn't honored, but because she didn't need to be featured to be real. Across the city, Riven stared out from his boardroom window during a quarterly planning session. Someone on his team was presenting a data model he didn't ask for. He wasn't listening. He saw the article headline on his iPad before anyone else mentioned it. Leora Merrin, reshaping infrastructure without the spotlight. The cover image wasn't even a photo, just a silhouette. Her back turned, city in view. He didn't open the article. He didn't need to. He knew what it would say. She had done exactly what she said she would. Left, quietly, built, completely. He looked around the boardroom, 10 people in tailored suits waiting for his nod. He gave it, then stood. "Continue without me." He left without explaining. No one asked, because no one in the room knew what it felt like to lose something without ever being publicly blamed for it, but fully deserving it anyway. Later that day, he took the long route home, walked streets he hadn't walked in years, past bookstores, tea shops, those little corner cafes where people sat with their laptops and wrote things they'd never post. He paused at one window, the same bookstore where he used to meet Leora back when she still read fiction for fun. He didn't go in. He just stood there for a moment, then turned and walked away. Because some rooms aren't meant to be revisited, only remembered. With respect, back in her apartment, Leora was reorganizing her bookshelves. She didn't do it for aesthetics. She did it because she wanted to make room for the new titles coming in from the women in her program. Books they were writing, research they were publishing, ideas they were finally brave enough to put on paper. She reserved an entire shelf for them, labeled it quietly, Legacy in Progress. It wasn't her name that would last, it was theirs. And that was exactly how she wanted it. That evening, Kaysen stopped by with takeout and 2 folding chairs. Her dining chairs were being reupholstered. He didn't complain. He sat cross-legged on the floor beside her and unwrapped the containers like it was a picnic. "You look tired when I texted," he said. Didn't want to ask why, just wanted to be nearby. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I think I finally feel full," she said softly. "Good," he replied. She looked up at him. "But I'm still learning how to be loved in ways that don't feel like I'm sacrificing to receive." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Then let's take our time," she smiled. And for once, she didn't feel the urge to run. She didn't feel the need to earn anything. She just let herself stay, soft, safe, and seen. The elevator stopped on the 42nd floor. It hadn't in a long time. Leora stood inside, calm, her reflection staring back in the mirrored panel. She wasn't trembling. Her fingers didn't flinch. She wasn't here for closure. She wasn't here for Riven. She was here because this building, this symbol of silence and power, no longer carried weight in her chest. Kaysen stood beside her, hands in his coat pockets. He didn't ask if she wanted to be here. He simply walked beside her when she said, "I'm going back." Not to stay, to finish. They stepped into the hallway. The scent was the same. Vanilla, cedar, precision. Nothing out of place. She glanced once at the door that led to the north hallway. The one with the black panel. The keypad. The lie. She didn't flinch. She didn't stop. She walked past it, toward the study, her name still engraved faintly on the glass plaque beside the wall. It used to be a point of pride. Now it was just a piece of the story. She reached for the box she left years ago, the one she didn't take with her when she left. A journal, one of her earlier ones. She slipped it into her bag. Kaysen stayed by the window, saying nothing. She turned to him. "I thought it would feel heavier." He studied her. "You're not the same woman who walked out." "No," she said. "I'm the one who doesn't need this place to prove I existed." They didn't stay long. She didn't touch the kitchen, didn't check the bedroom, didn't scan the room for memories. She'd already taken them with her and rewritten them on her own terms. They left quietly. No door slams, no final words. Outside, the city moved on like it always did. And so did she. 2 weeks later, the program hosted its first private showcase. All 20 women, each given 5 minutes to share what they were building. No pitch deck, no QYA, no investors allowed, just peers. Leora opened the evening with one line. "We don't gather for approval. We gather to remind each other what we already are." Applause came. Kaysen stood in the back of the room listening, watching. Not once did he try to take up space, because he knew she had more than enough of her own now. At the end of the night, one of the youngest women approached Leora with tears in her eyes. "You never asked us to be perfect," she said. "You just asked us to show up." Leora smiled gently. Perfection was never the point. Wholeness is. That night, back home, she lit a single candle. She sat by the window with her journal, the old one, flipped to the first page. It was a note to herself. Don't shrink, don't apologize, don't settle for the room they built when you are meant to design your own. She smiled, closed the book, slid it back on the shelf next to the others, and walked to the kitchen where Kaysen had already poured tea. She took it from his hand, sat on the floor beside him. He looked at her quietly. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking, I used to believe survival was the end of the story. And now I know survival is just where the real life begins." Weeks passed. Then, a month. The program's second cohort launched in spring. Applications tripled. The press still didn't know who funded it. Leora kept it that way. People called her elusive. She called it free. She stopped accepting panel invites, stopped letting others define her time in minutes. She didn't disappear. She just became unavailable to anything that asked her to shrink. One afternoon, Kaysen found her in her studio, the second bedroom she'd turned into her quiet space. There were books everywhere, notebooks, printouts, sticky notes on the wall. He leaned in the doorway. "You building a new company?" She looked up, half smiling. "No, I'm building a curriculum for the next generation of women who won't need someone like me because they'll already know their worth." He walked in, sat on the floor beside her. "That sounds like legacy." She nodded. "I want them to learn before the room ever gets built around them." He didn't interrupt, just watched her with that quiet respect he always carried. Then said, "Want help?" She looked at him. "You're not here to complete me." He smiled. "I'm just here to sit beside what's already whole." She reached for his hand. "You already are." Meanwhile, Riven sold the penthouse. No press release, no redesign. Just a quiet transfer of ownership to a development firm looking to turn the space into a wellness retreat suite. He handed over the keys in silence, walked through the empty rooms one last time. He didn't linger. He didn't romanticize. He accepted. The rooms were never meant to be kept, especially when built on silence. One evening, Leora received a small package. No note, just a photo frame. Inside it, a new photograph. A group picture from the most recent Women in Infrastructure session. 20 smiling women. Leora not in the center, but off to the side. Hands folded. Proud. Present. She placed the frame on her shelf, between the books, and for the first time in years, she looked at her own reflection in the window and felt one simple thing. Stillness. Not the kind she fought to keep, the kind that stayed. Because she did. A few days later, Kaysen took her to a cabin upstate. No agenda, no noise, just wood floors, low firelight, and slow meals. They sat on the porch one morning, wrapped in a shared blanket, watching the wind move through the trees. He asked, "Do you miss anything?" She thought for a while, then said, "No, I remember everything, but I don't carry any of it." He nodded. They didn't speak for the next hour, and it was perfect. Back in the city, she took one last look at the old building downtown before passing it without pause. That used to be a part of her story. Now it was just another building, nothing else. And when she returned home that evening, she opened her window, let the wind move through the room, and said nothing. Because the final word was never meant to be loud. It was meant to be lived. Final line. Sometimes the most feared men only needed one invitation to remember they still had a heart. If you stayed until the end of this story, it means you know, power doesn't always need a microphone. Sometimes, power walks away without slamming the door. Sometimes, it builds a new house without telling the ones who locked them out. Sometimes, healing doesn't roar. It sits still. It leads quietly. It helps others rise without asking for credit. And it outlasts every room it was once denied entry to. If you've ever been told to be quiet, and you chose clarity instead of noise, drop A in the comments. Because this story isn't just about a woman who found a secret room. It's about a woman who never needed to be hidden to be unforgettable. Subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more stories where strength doesn't scream, it simply stays. And when it stays, it changes everything.